Okay, thank you both. The district's infrastructure needs are a concern across the community. We've spoken extensively about that. Do you foresee a future bond? If so, how would you like to see the board partner with the community in the hopes of passing an infrastructure bond?
I'll go first on that. It's a tough question in our current COVID environment. Yes, I think that I don't think bonds are a bad thing. I think that bonds are a good thing. Actually, financially, fiscally, I learned that having bonds and having debt in a school district is actually a good thing. It actually helps us. And technically, we're in good financial standing in that we don't have a lot of active debt. We actually, in the last year of paying off a previous debt, where a lot of school districts have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, we actually don't. So we don't have loans that we're paying. So I do think we need to have a bond. If you look at other school districts, many of them bond maybe small bonds every few years, 2 to 3 years, they're doing a small bond, they're doing a small project, and then that district keeps that level of loan that they have to pay back. That helps them look good to the state to give money to, but then also it helps to maintain our buildings and upkeep all of the things that we need to do. So I definitely foresee a bond in the future, but definitely a much lower bond than we attempted last year. How would I like to see the board partner with the community in hopes of passing an infrastructure bond? Well, I have a lot of ideas about community involvement. I'm on the community engagement committee, and I definitely think that we need to do a much better job. Hey, babe, we need to do a much better job of grabbing and including, this is Christopher, grabbing and including our community members and civic associations in, okay, go with Sister. Including our community and our civic associations in a lot of the planning, a lot of the planning for our bonds and as well for our school district. I think we need to remind our community of the great students that we have that attend the schools, as well as the staff, and the great work that's being done. And if we include them, bring them in the room, I think that things will get a little bit better. I actually think the benefit of having our bond go down last year is that we gained a whole bunch of attention and we gained a whole bunch of interest in the school district. People that were never coming out, maybe they were just home voting yes or no, they're coming out, they're asking questions. As Mr. Pineda said, they're coming to our facilities committee meeting. They're kind of inserting their expertise into our conversations in the school district, and that's what we need. We need more of that. So I definitely think we need to get out there and speak to people. And so hopefully next year our CEC committee will do a little bit more community engagement rather than having the community come to our meetings. Maybe we'll go to meetings. Maybe we will present information in a way that people are actually interested in what we're doing. In fact, the economic stress that our community is going to be under post-COVID may help, because people may choose to try the school district that wouldn't have otherwise chosen to try it because they can't afford private school or parochial school and they just want to save a little bit of money. They may try the school district and they may be happy. So, you know, it may work in our favor to have the community involved a little bit more.
Ms. Mairs, you said something, you said the same thing on two different sides. I'd like you to just briefly explain what you've learned.
Okay.
Or this can also be a totally fine time to turn it over to Mr. Pineda if you want to jump in and explain. Just to clarify for the people watching, you did point out that it's positive that we don't have debt. We're in very good financial standing. But you also pointed out that having that debt is a positive. Do you mean in the same way that you have to have debt to raise your credit score because it shows you're paying it off? Is it that?
It's similar to that. So if we, and I'm not sure how I said it exactly, so I want to clarify. Not having debt works against us when it comes to getting funding. So they look at our need for funding, and we don't seem to have a need for funding, even though we do. It looks like we don't have a need for funding. So that's what I mean. So
is that because we're able to pay all our bills? It doesn't look like we need help paying our bills. Is that what the paper tells us?
Yes, and also that we don't. Yes, so we're not having to pay out to a previous bond or a previous loan that we took.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll start. Just to, Miss Mairs covered that perfectly, I think. But one thing I would just like to add is that I don't think any of us actually knew that. When we took that trip to Albany and we heard that, we were like, wait, what? We did a double take. Like, what do you mean? That doesn't compute in my brain, at least.
Yeah, that was new to me too.
And as Ms. Mairs explained it, what they said is basically as part of their calculations of the ratios and all these complicated metrics that they get into, effectively, because we have no debt, we don't lower the amount of money that we have available to spend in their eyes on our own needs.
Mm-hmm.
While many of our neighboring districts, including wealthier districts, do carry debt. So that kind of equalizes, that brings their ability to spend down. And because of that, the state's like, oh, well, Greenburgh's got money to burn, they're fine. Even though that's not the case, as we all know. So that's just to add a little bit there. Do I foresee a future bond? I think if anyone sat in any kind of meeting and said no, they would be disingenuous. Absolutely, we're going to have a future bond. There's no doubt about that. What I do personally feel is going to happen, though, as Ms. Mairs said, it is going to be a much smaller bond. I don't want to say to someone, hey, it's going to be $1 million and we're done, because our needs are very great. But what we're going to do, and what I would like to do in my mind, is ensure that we can pick, a specific, hopefully my approach is, in my mind, pick a building. I know in some of our meetings with community members that opposed our bond, frankly, during the last time we tried it, have come straight out and honestly said, you know what, you're not going to get X dollars, you're not going to get that much, but pick one building. And based on, all the opinions they've heard as well from individuals with their same thought process, pick one building, get the one building done, and then move on. And that seems to be a common thread with everyone I've spoken to. Everyone seems to be of that opinion that maybe we tackle this one building at a time or one project at a time. And as Ms. Mairs mentioned, a lot of most school districts in New York State, what they do is they pass what I would consider maybe sequential bonds. So you'll pass bond A and tackle whatever you can tackle. And then once bond A is coming end of life and coming and that cost is going away, you pass bond B, which is basically the same amount of money. And you pick another set of initiatives to work on and address. And that way you're not necessarily increasing the way your taxes, in one shot significantly, but you are still, in piecemeal getting to the needs of the infrastructure, which any way we cut it, you're absolutely right. Our entire community is concerned about that. And that was pretty evident in our last fiscal committee meeting, when pretty much the entire public that participated said, hey, you need to add that capital reserve funding back. So with that said, how do I see the board partnering with the community? It's exactly what I was starting to see right before COVID-19 struck. As I mentioned earlier, our facilities meeting had, I think, 20 individuals from the community show up and giving us our ideas and giving us their feedback, listening to our ideas of what we were thinking at the time. And it was actually very enriching for me personally, because we were able to see the different thoughts and the different perspectives of our community members, which I think is something that up until you get, a wide swath of our community attending and giving us their feedback, as Ms. Mairs mentioned earlier, I mean, if you're sitting in a room with 10 like-minded people, yeah, you guys are all in agreement. You guys are all making progress. And yeah, we're marching forward and great. We're moving at breakneck speed. But if you're only hearing the same opinion, then when you throw it out to the community and you're not getting the other opinions and the other perspectives, that's easy for things to fail. So I'm very happy that we're, at least right before COVID-19, we were getting to a point where we were getting feedback, we were getting input. But I think that despite COVID-19 kind of putting a little bit of I guess, a chink in the chain of the bicycle chain, and it kind of like slowed us down there. I do feel, frankly, that the community is actually, I would venture to say, more involved now during COVID-19 than they were because pre-COVID-19, 20 people attended. During COVID-19, we had 40 something, if I'm not mistaken, if I heard the numbers right. And that was on a Saturday, which usually on a beautiful Saturday that most people would rather not be sitting there in a meeting, but yet here they were. Our community was active and participating and giving us their feedback. And I think that's the way we're going to pass our next bond, is by having that input of what our community will actually support. Because at the end of the day, we can come up, the board can come up, the administration can come up, we can come up with all these ideas, but if our community won't support it, we're just wasting time. So I think that we're actually on the right track. I'm hopeful that post-COVID-19, this continued participation continues to increase. And hopefully with a little luck, we'll be able to pass a bond in the future.
Thank you. The next set of questions. Please address how you as a board member will work to reverse the trend of declining registration and to increase parent and family involvement in the district. We have spoken quite a bit about that. If you'd like to just pin some of that, that would be great. Along those lines, what school and PTA events have you attended this year? And in the context of students and families, please tell us how in your work on the board you strive to meet the needs of diverse learners.
Okay, so I think it's my turn now to go first, right?
Go ahead.
Okay, so please address how you as a board member. Okay, so this is a really tough question, and here's why. I think most of us would agree that New York State itself is in the middle of what I would call an exodus. There are a lot of individuals that are leaving our state, frankly, because, taxes are across the board. New York State, the taxes are really high, especially in Westchester County. So with that said, declining registration, while some of it can be attributed to, the parts of our community that want to send their kids to private school and maybe not pay so much in taxes, that's definitely a percentage of it. But overall, New York State has a huge influx of people leaving our state because of taxes. And with that said, I don't think it's as simple as how can you reverse that trend. What I think we can do is we can hopefully slow the rate of declining registration. And the way I see that happening, it's actually COVID-19 is one of those things that I would consider a mixed blessing, specifically because a lot of what I've read as of late and what I've personally seen with some of my newest neighbors is that a lot of individuals from New York City are moving out of New York City, specifically because of fears that have arisen because of COVID-19, but also cost of living. Cost of living in New York City, renting an apartment is not the way it was 10, 15 years ago, where it was still relatively affordable depending on the area of the city. Now, even the quote unquote areas that folks typically did not want to be in are getting super priced out. I mean, it's incredible, the price of real estate these days. So a lot of younger families are moving out of the city. And what's the logical, a very commutable place to get to the city? Well, Greenburgh's one of them. We're right on the Harlem line. It's very easy to get into the city. So I'm hopeful that's going to help improve some of it. I have seen a lot of younger families, like I said, that have moved into our district now, into our community, and that are willing to give it a chance. And I think that if we can continue on this trend that I've been seeing as of late, again, thanks to COVID-19, of increasing our parental involvement, if we can continue to offer some of these programs that we've already talked about in brief, IB, ALP, some of those really attractive programs that a lot of our neighboring school districts are not offering, I think we got a good shot at least stemming the tide. I don't anticipate we're going to be able to stop the decline of registration significantly in the short term. But my hope is that in the long term, as we work through continuing to try to support our district and support the programs that we have as much as we can, given our current, economic restraints, I'm hoping that will improve. What school and PTA events have I attended this year? Okay, let me think about this. So if we start with the beginning of the school year, there was a Dads Take Your Kids Back to School event. And I remember I was running around between Highview, and next thing I know, I was in the high school. And there was actually a really impressive, presentation we had with some community members that showed up, and it was actually very moving. So there was that. I've been to most, if not all, Highview events. What else qualifies as this year? Well, technically, the Evening of Elegance was last year. Long and short, I've been to a lot of school events this year. And it'd be hard for me to sit here and say, okay, it was this, it was that, it was the other. I've definitely been to a few of them. I haven't been to all of them. It's a little tough for me to attend events, specifically the ones that occur during the day. But I do my best to attend as much as I can, especially the evening events. Please tell us how, and you work on the board. Okay, diverse learners. So diverse learners, that's one of the things that we have a great wealth of in our district. We actually have a lot of diversity in how our children learn. In my opinion, the different programs we have are specifically how we meet those needs of those diverse learners. Some children are very visually oriented, some are more auditory, some are more, some children need an approach of, hey, you know what? Maybe we're going to, do an activity in the classroom where we're going to spend some time on a carpet reading a book. Versus others will prefer being at their desk and working through a problem. Our district is actually very fortunate to have that big diversity of how our children learn. And because of that, they learn about the world through each other's eyes. I can't tell you how many times my children haven't come home and told me, oh, this happened today and that happened today and all these different experiences. How does my work on the board do that? I won't specifically sit here and say, well, Mr. Pineda's work does that, and it's a checkbox here and a checkbox there. But what I do think is that as a board, we strive to ensure that we all try to meet the needs of our diverse learners. And each decision that I make and that my colleagues make, and again, I'm speaking for myself only here, I want to put that out there again, is made with the best intention of trying to ensure that none of our children do not have their educational needs met. And that's the best way I can answer that question at this point in time.
Thank you. Ms. Mairs?
So address on the board member will work to reverse the trend of declining registration. So I think I agree definitely with what Ashley said, that we can't have as much of an impact, but what we can try to do is definitely inform the community of the wonderful things we're doing, continue to get the word out through talking with our neighbors. I even like the idea of putting our kids out into the community. Many of our kids are Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, they do public service, but really having our children show themselves in the community and the wonderful things that they're doing, like the jazz band or the performance band participating in some of the parades that we have, so that the community is aware of the wonderful things that we're doing. And that helps to bring attention to the school district, as well as have parents be willing to look into utilizing the school district. Definitely supporting our ECP program is a way to help to increase our registration, because no one wants to pay for pre-K for their 4-year-old. So why not try it? I live in an area where they have pre-K, where actually the curriculum starts down at pre-K. So they're not just babysitting, they're actually doing curriculum and learning. So it's important to grab our earlier students, our 4-year-olds, and get them registered into the school. Why we need a good building for our pre-K and children to be housed instead of different buildings. So that's just another shot for supporting a small bond. And I think we increase parent and family involvement by being collaborative with parents and families. I think if the school board and the administration and the building administrations work together to collaborate with the PTAs, even more so. I know when I was on the PTA, I had a great working relationship with the administration, and I think that needs to continue to be fostered. That helps, because that way we can communicate very well to our parents and families, and then they will hopefully become more involved. What school and PTA events have you attended this year? Yikes. We've had a lot of special meetings on the board. I do have to add that I'm a divorced mom of 3. You've seen my kids running around, and I work part-time, albeit, but I work. So not as many events that I have attended in the past. So this school year has been very busy. But I will say I've attended, all of the school events would be the open houses, back to school, definitely where my kids go to school at Leaf Jackson, Bailey, and Woodlands. I am also on the Woodlands PTA because I'm insane. And so I'm the secretary on that PTA. So I go to all of those PTA meetings, obviously, as a secretary. I went to all the Halloween events, I think at the ECP Halloween event, which was a walkthrough at Woodlands because I think it was raining that day. Mm-hmm. I went to the Jackson, the Highview. I literally went the round robin to all the school Halloween events. I stopped in the Highview store. Was it that day or was another event that I stopped at the Highview store, the school store? I'm trying to think what other PTA events I've attended. I've attended a few of the parent IB events. Even though my daughter's only in 8th grade, she's not able to be in the full diploma program that doesn't start until 11th grade. But I did want to learn more about it as a board member, but also as a parent, so that I could help to spread the word to other parents also, because a lot of the parents were chatting about it, but they wouldn't go to the meeting. So I was able to kind of, encourage them to go ahead and find out more about it and share the little bit that I've learned. I'm trying to think what other events I attended. I went to homecoming. I did not go to the pep rally this year. But yeah, I haven't been to as many things as I normally go to because this year's been a little hectic. My middle daughter also does competitive dance 4 nights a week in the city. So I was running like crazy. So COVID-19 has definitely slowed this family down a little bit. But yeah, so that's the event so far that I can think of off the top of my head that I've attended. Please tell us how in your work on the board you strive to meet the needs of diverse learners. Well, so when you say diverse learner, I think of all different types of things. I think of children who are bilingual. I think of children who are super bright, right? And then they need additional push and support, additional curriculum, additional challenge. I think of children that maybe don't do well in the traditional classroom, but they do well in sports, they do well in the arts. And I support all of that. I support the sports, I support the arts. My kids are artistic, my kids are sports kids, so I actually go as a parent, but also as a board member to all of these sporting events and art events. I also, a school event that I attended was the arts, I can't think of the name of it, but where they have our art displayed at the town hall as well. So I also attend that event, and that's pretty awesome and large. I support our advanced learners. I was very instrumental in pushing the school to develop another advanced learning program. And so they did that as well last year or the year before, to the end of the second year this year. Also support the IB program. I support our ENL, which is our English as a new language learner, because we have children that come from all over that come here predominantly speaking Spanish, but we also have Creole. We also have students that speak Mandarin, which is great because we teach Mandarin, but all languages. So I support all types of learners, and I think because of our diversity in our school district, we have all types of learners that we must address and make sure that they're learning.
Thank you. Moving on, what are the criteria you personally utilize when considering tenure for a central office administrator? And then generally the response from the community for HNA regarding Dr. Chase's handling of COVID-19 crisis has been overwhelmingly positive. We have had some questions wanting to know whether you personally support extending her contract.
I think this is my turn. I have been asked that second question so much this last week. It's very strange. It's like overabundance of me being asked that question. So I'll start with the beginning. What criteria do I personally utilize when considering tenure for a central office administrator? So, of course, there's the standard official documentation, performance evaluations. But for me, I grew up here. I live here. Well, we all live here, but I grew up here. I was educated here. I left. I returned with my children here. I know so much about Greenburgh, just from not necessarily like the history. I know the history, but anyone can know it, but more of the feel of Greenburgh. And for me personally, when I'm thinking about a tenure, I'm thinking about someone who is willing to connect with all of our community. We have a very, very diverse community. And I don't mean just race, I mean class, I mean ethnicity, I mean financial status, I mean mental health status, I mean naturalization status. And you have to be a administrator, an employee, a custodian that is willing to love and support our community, willing to understand our taxpayers' needs, willing to understand our students' needs, our families' needs, and connect with them. And I know when I was on the PTA Council as the president, we had so much involvement with central office administration and really going out into the community and really speaking to the parents, speaking to them in their languages. We had translators at every meeting. We blasted information out. Our central office administrators was at events. They would come to different events that we had, really connecting with our community and getting out there and saying, hey, hello, this is the school district and this is what we're doing. And if you're a parent, we want you here. And if you're not a parent, we want you here. We want you to know what we're doing. And I think that that's so important because the central office administrator is really also someone who has to foster buy-in to the school district. You have to foster people's confidence in what you're going to do. You don't just have to have the ability, you have to connect with people and show the ability. You have to be show that initiative, show that hunger, that drive to really push Greenburgh, push our success, push our students to reach their maximum potential. So that's what I look for. Of course, it's very important to have an administrator that connects with our staff so that the staff feel comfortable as well to follow the lead of that administrator with supporting our families and our students. The response from the community regarding Dr. Chase's handling of COVID-19 crisis has been overwhelmingly positive. Do you support extending her contract? So I'm going to give the answer that I gave the last 4 or 5 people that asked me this week, in that's a conversation with the board and Dr. Chase. And I definitely would not be discussing anyone's contract in a meeting like this. I don't think it's appropriate, but I also want to say that any contract that we have with any of our administrators or staff is definitely a conversation. I mean, when you hire someone, you start a job, you have a conversation, you have an interview, but when you're offered the job, you have a conversation, and that conversation is detailed. It looks like, what are the expectations from both sides? And it's the same thing with extensions of contracts or re-signing contracts or anything like that. So my answer is that's a conversation between the full board and Dr. Chase.
Thank you. Mr. Pineda?
Okay. Yes, I unmuted myself. Okay, perfect. So what criteria do I personally utilize when considering tenure for a central office administrator? Okay, so there's the boilerplate. Okay, you get the recommendation for the superintendent or for their direct supervisor. Hey, we want to put this person for tenure. What a lot of our community is not aware of is that behind the closed doors in our exec meetings, we get a lot more information. Obviously, there's a lot of questions that come up. Personally, I look at, we typically get kind of a portfolio, a snapshot of each individual that's up for tenure, their work, their accomplishments, some examples of what they've done. I consider all of that, but I also, where I'm able to, I try to get feedback, not by going out and asking folks what they think about a particular individual, but I pay attention. I'm probably one of the people on the board that speaks the least at most meetings. In public, in general, I'm usually a very reserved person. That doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. Most of the time, I'm sitting there quietly, but I'm observant. And with that said, I pay attention to what I hear, ask probing questions where appropriate, and I consider, how does this person fit into the long-term plans of Greenburgh Central School District? Do they meet what our children most importantly need? Are they going to be a viable individual for the long run? What I do not want to do is I do not want to just go in there and rubber stamp someone because that's doing our children a disservice, and frankly, it's doing our entire Greenburgh community a disservice. So, a lot of folks without knowing the process, they're probably not aware of that. But there is a lot of dialogue that goes on when we're considering someone for tenure, and there is a lot of thought process that I put in. And again, I won't speak for the whole board, but it's my opinion that the rest of the board takes that process just as serious as I do. And we really do consider each individual candidate very thoroughly before we decide when we're going to agree to someone's being granted tenure or not. Moving on to the next question. I would agree that I think that our superintendent has done an amazing job of the COVID-19 crisis. I mentioned it earlier. I think our district as a whole, our teachers, down to our bus drivers, everybody kind of flipped the switch from one night to the other, and we're just in this, okay, we're remote work, we're remote learning mode now. And I don't think many of our peer districts did that as seamlessly as our district did. As I mentioned earlier, we did have an advantage. We had a leg up for sure. We had we had one-to-one Chromebooks deployed from third grade on up. That helps a lot. And we've had a lot of, technology, taking advantage of a lot of technologies that we had access to and already had in play. And one of the other things that helps our district in terms of COVID-19 is, the percentage of our students that don't have access to internet compared to other school districts that may be in more rural settings is obviously, we have a much better percentage of our school community that does have access to internet, and that helps a lot. So I think the administration and the superintendent did a great job as well. Do I support extending her contract? I will tell you right now, that is an executive session item. And that's a conversation I'm not willing to have in public. As Tracy, as Miss Mairs mentioned, it's definitely something that, it's something that we talk about in exec session. It's something that, similar to the tenure conversation, it's very seriously handled. We look at all aspects of it. It's not a single event that defines that decision. It's the whole picture, right? It's what is the progress over the last X amount of years? What is the vision that is seen moving forward? How else can we continue to improve our school district? What are the thoughts and the path, the direction that's being taken now? Are we on the right track? Do we need to adjust it? All those things factor into that conversation, and all those things will be discussed and addressed seriously as a board when that conversation comes up. And we'll make a decision. That, like everything else, the conversations when decisions come up with the board, there are 7 of us, and there are 7 of us that often have, as I said earlier, we may have different opinions and different points of views, but on average, we tend to, at least as a majority, we tend to agree on some things, and some things we have to, have more vigorous debates about. And that's as much as I'm willing to say on this one. So I think when that conversation comes up, we'll have the conversation in the boardroom. We'll factor in every single piece of the equation, and as a board, we'll make a decision whether the contract gets extended or not.
Can I just add to, when we're talking
Please.
about tenure or contracts or anything like that, for me, working here is not just like a job. It's a family. It's a commitment. I mean, look at being a board member. We meet, I don't know how many nights every week. We meet so often. And we have the communications going back and forth. And I said at one point, I can't believe I volunteer for this. Like, it's so much a part of your life. It becomes ingrained in your everyday life in many ways. And it's the same thing when we talk tenure, whether it's tenure for a teacher or an administrator, whether it's a superintendent contract, no matter what it is, it's a family. It's not just a job. And the same thing with the board. It's a team. It's a family. It's a commitment for 3 years. It's not just like volunteering to, I don't know, pick up trash for a little bit. It's actually being engaged and being committed.
Thank you. Okay, we are getting toward the end. Congratulations on last night's meeting to agree on a budget draft. Did you have any personal contributions under consideration in the budget that you agreed on, or are there 1 or 2 specific items that you like or dislike that you'd like to share? And then our final question, looking back, what is the thing you are most proud of during this most recent term?
Okay, so I think it's my turn this time. I'm lost track already.
Go for it.
Perfect. All right. Did I have any personal contributions under consideration in the current budget? Okay, I think the gist of this question is there any specific item or specific contribution to the decision-making process? That's how I'm going to interpret this question.
The way I interpreted it was of the multiple questions that came in, the way I interpreted it was, yes, what did you personally bring to the conversation? Where did you personally feel like you drove that conversation, whether it's line items that you added or fought for, or parts of the process that you take ownership of? Sure.
Okay. So with that said, personally, I think that one of the things that I helped contribute to in the conversation was one of the things I usually try to do, which is when I feel that we are at an impasse or at a point where there is not a lot of agreement in the room, I try my best, and I feel like I did in a few instances when we were talking about the budget, chime in when I felt needed to try to bring us back to center as much as possible. It was definitely a difficult process. Interestingly, it was my first budget process, and I think it's probably one I will never forget because, like I said, I think we went up to 9 revisions, I think, at this point. But with that said, I think I contributed in a few ways. I won't say I had the majority of contributions during this budget, but I definitely think I did have a few personal contributions. Are there 1 or 2 specific items I like or dislike? Well, the biggest thing for me is in a perfect world, I would have loved to have increased funding for a lot of our programs. One of the things that I really dislike about our current, scenario that we're in, and this is of no fault of anyone. I mean, no one, a year ago, no one, I think, in Westchester County, let alone the United States, would have been talking about COVID-19 at all. I think that was definitely something that took all of us by surprise. And unfortunately, because of that, we had to make a lot of hard decisions. With that said, one thing I am happy about is that, we were able to really push not, laying anyone off or having anyone lose their job. But I frankly would have loved to have put more funding in for our programs. Some of the programs that we've had to trim a little bit here, trim a little bit there. And long term, I'm hopeful that we're able to add that funding back in. Specifically, I would have loved to see some of the more capital assigned to our buildings. I think that in a perfect world, we would have maybe gone above and beyond the 1.3 million we're assigning to the capital reserve. I would have loved to have seen that be higher. I would have loved to, be in a position to be willing to throw out a bond this year. Clearly, that's not, as far as I can see, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not there right now. It's not feasible. So those are some of the things that I personally, like and dislike about the process we went through. What I did like, though, is even though this is my first time going through this process, frankly, I'm of the opinion that we had a lot more public participation than we had in the past. So I do like that. Again, that goes along the theme of what I said before. If our community doesn't support what we are in our minds thinking that we all do support, then we're going nowhere. What is the one thing I am most proud of during my term? Well, my term has been very short. It's only been 14 months or something like that along those lines, who's counting? With that said, I think the thing I'm most proud of during this term is, personally, I've taken this very seriously, and I have done my best to make every decision the best I can do. And I frankly want to say, I feel, and this is again, in my opinion, I feel that our board today compared to our board, 2 years ago, or going past a little further than that, I feel that we're moving in a faster pace than what I've seen in the past. And I feel that we're moving some things forward. We definitely had a lot of things hit us this year. And despite that, we still have made progress. It's not as much progress as I would have liked to have made in this past 14 months. But given everything that's happened, I think we've done a decent job of moving things forward. And I'm hopeful we continue to accelerate the pace if possible.
Great. Thank you. Tracy?
Hi. So let's see, personal contributions under consideration. Well, when the budget, very first draft of the budget came out, my main consideration was in getting more funding into our buildings and our building funding. So I definitely was pushing for some certain things to be cut back. Specifically, I was looking at administrative costs and transportation to be cut back and kind of moved into funding for our buildings. So I don't know if, I guess the administration would really have to ask how much I influence moving some monies more toward the building funds. Are there any two specific items that you like or dislike? Well, and I kind of will also revisit that first part of the question also. I think I really like, and I think I've really pushed for more social emotional learning. Anyone that knows since I've gotten on the board, I've talked about increase in social work services, mental health services for all the students in the schools, having, guidance counselors even in lower grades, not just in the middle and high school, having more access to social emotional support, where right now we have, well, not this upcoming year, but right now we have psychologists or social workers split between two different buildings, servicing two different buildings. That moving forward will not happen. That's not proposed to happen in the next budget, as well as we've actually set aside monies for social and emotional learning. And of course, with COVID-19, we're going to need more of that. But even before then, I was pushing that. So those are things that I really like. Things I dislike, I don't like so much of the monies that we spend on certain things, like, I don't know, our last board meeting or maybe the one before that, we talked about the monies for the auditorium doors, right? So I voted against that, but it passed, fine. But things like that, for me, I try to prioritize because we're in this health pandemic. I wonder how much certain things are needed. We already have things planned to do them, but it makes me, I do dislike a little bit when we try to just get certain things done that are either always done or we will generally need in the regular scheme of things. We should fund this, but because things have changed so much, it concerns me if we pay for that. I think last night my big thing was PR. Do we need so much money in PR? And there were arguments for and against. And a lot of the times, even though I may be on one side of the decision, I don't completely disagree with the other side. I just believe my side a little bit more, but sometimes I can be convinced, to change back. But something I disliked was the amount of money that we were putting into PR. I thought that could have come back a little bit, and I think we did cut it back a little bit ultimately by the end of the night. Looking back, what is the one thing you are most proud of during your term? And this is going to be very difficult to continue just because of all the things that are going on right now. But being myself, being true to who I am, I'm pretty transparent. I pretty much say exactly what is on my mind, sometimes a little more than I should. But I'm an extremely thoughtful person when it comes to other people. I'm kind, and I just want to do the right thing. I just want to try to improve the school district. So that means I ask a lot of questions that may be uncomfortable sometimes to try to push for some improvements to happen. That means that I sometimes get passionate and frustrated when I feel like other people aren't being very respectful. And it's just something I'm proud of, being myself, being honest and being transparent, and being literally a divorced mom who just wants to help the school district. So I volunteer, and I really hope that in the future more people do commit to spending 3 years of their life volunteering. I think that this year and somewhat of last year, as Mr. Pineda said, we've kind of tried to make some changes to make things a little bit better. I know Antoinette and I, as she's president, I'm vice president, we're trying to streamline certain forms of information that the board gets so that anyone can step in and rotate in to be the president and still be okay getting the information, understanding how to run the board, understanding what things are needed to be done, so that hopefully more people can commit to just giving up 3 years of their life. But you don't have to have so many special meetings, and just really sharing your expertise with the board, whether it's expertise in finance, expertise in law, expertise in education, expertise in community involvement, understanding Greenburgh, understanding Hartsdale, understanding Fairview, understanding the school district, and really committing to helping out and helping our children to have excellent education experience. That's what I'm proud of that. I'm doing that. I'm here. I'm committed, and I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of Mr. Pineda for his commitment too.
I would love to leave it there because that's lovely. But I have to ask, because you did say before, you said that you're very proud of being yourself, which I think is very valuable. You gave yourself a caveat and said you're going to have to not be as much moving forward. Can you expand on that for a moment?
Oh, of course, because I just say too much. You know what? There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of politics with every elected position, right? I know you know that, Samantha, right?
Yes, I do.
Right. So
yes, I do.
I'm not great with politics. I suck at it. Mr. Pineda has had to counsel me. Internet counsels me almost daily. So yeah, I think it's hard to just be really transparent and not have to align, as Mr. Pineda said. He's not aligned with anybody. He tries to really, I think it's hard. I don't know, he'll tell you, but I think it's hard. You have to really try to stay focused. And sometimes, and with everything, sometimes when you enter into a system, you know, the district is a working system. It's an environment. There's people that play politics, and it's like you're jumping into the game and you don't play well. And it's like, whoa, this is tough. So that's why I said it's hard. It's going to be hard for me not to change and to be political, but I'm trying. I'm trying to maintain my transparency, myself, because it's really it's something that I'm proud of, that I've done for the last 3 years, and I'm going to continue to try to do that as well. And so that's what I meant.
Thank you for expanding. Okay, I'd like to leave this up for just a moment while I thank you both so much for your time. And I have a very, very, very brief closing statement when we're finished with this presentation, but we do want to point out that ballots are due June 9th. Please vote, please vote, please vote. The district is paying for all eligible voters to receive a postage paid absentee ballot. You'll have to just fill it out, turn around, mail it right back. It does again have to be received by June 9th. And Ms. Mairs and Mr. Pineda, your emails, your district emails are here. People can, this will, I don't think, be a click-through link. I think people will have to type it in old school, but you're welcome to copy and paste. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, but before we let you go, I do need to say that Hartsdale Neighbors, HNA, is a volunteer-driven civic association. We work to support engagement and community-based problem solving and to enhance civic awareness. If anyone watching would like to volunteer with our committee for educational excellence or any of our other committees, please email info@hartsdaleneighbors.org. And candidates, thank you so much. Thank you for this very wide-ranging and direct conversation. I appreciate your candor and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.